So today I wanted to talk to you about neck set and overstand and also the relationship between where the heel of the neck is here and this part of the instrument here, what effect that has to the player and also what effect it has to the setup of the instrument as a whole. So I'd say, first of all, what is the overstand? So the overstand is this measurement here, and it's really the relationship of how the neck comes out of the instrument. This is actually an area that's changed a lot over years. So originally, when a lot of these instruments were made, so this one's made in about 1860, and it actually had the original three-string neck when we got it, which had been reset. But basically, you would probably expect to see maybe a centimetre or so overstand, very, very small amount. And it's one of those things that sort of changed a lot over the years. So it was not, normal to have maybe almost none or 10 millimetres. Then it sort of became where people would maybe do 20 millimetres was normal. Then it kind of moved up to 30. When my father first started making instruments, he used to use about 36 millimetres. So when I sort of became more involved in instrument making, he'd already moved it out to 40 millimetres. And I think over the last 10 years, on our larger instruments, we've actually increased this to 44. And on a 5-string bass, you'd expect to see about 50 for a new instrument. If it's a really, really big old instrument, 5-string, maybe you might go even more, it depends. So how does this affect the player and the instrument? So first of all, from a player's point of view, when I go to play in the upper register, and I'm not a player, but when you go to play in the upper register, I'm already, by the time I'm getting here, and this has got quite a sloping shoulder, I'm starting to sort of get my elbow up. And by the time I've got to here, my elbow has come really quite far around the instrument. Now, if you imagine that this was in here, I'm even further round and into the bass. So if you imagine that was there, and look at the sort of, I'm already feeling like the tension a bit on my shoulder here. By the time that's come to here, it's a lot more relaxed. It actually makes it where you've got to get over the bass less than you would have to if it was closer. So playing in the upper registers becomes more easy and more comfortable, I suppose. That's one element of it. The other element is that the tension over the belly of the instrument or over the front of the instrument is largely affected by the angle that goes over the front. So this is something we're going to look at in more detail a little bit later on down the line, but it still has an effect now. If you imagine, the closer that this is into the instrument, the sharper this angle would be over the bridge. Of course, the closer you come to a flat, that's where the least tension would be, but obviously that wouldn't work. So you've got that angle there and that angle here. So lessening that angle as much as you can, dependent, basically releases the tension of the belly of the instrument, which makes for a freer, easier sound, but also a healthier instrument. So if you imagine that this was all the way in here, and we hadn't put the raised nut on, and it was all the way down there, and that was all the way down as well, there'd be a massive difference. With the same bridge height, it'd be a huge difference in tension over the belly, which obviously affects how it speaks and what the freedom of the instrument is like. So that's a really important thing, getting this right. This is an instrument we've actually re-necked here. We've done a scroll graft and reset the neck in so that we've given ourselves a bit more, we've given it the 44 millimetres that we would fit on a larger instrument, which actually makes it really playable. You can see that the angle is very easy over the belly, and because of that, the bass speaks really easily and beautifully. Another important thing to consider when you're setting the neck in the instrument is that this is central down the middle of the double bass. Now, it's pretty easy on a new instrument to get that right, but on an old instrument, quite often where the instrument's moved, it's maybe not quite square anymore. So it really is a case of, and sometimes the centre line, actually, the centre joint of the instrument, some instruments may not have a centre joint, an older one, and sometimes the centre joint may actually not be the centre. So if you just start fitting the neck into the instrument based on the centre joint alone as your only area of reference to decide the middle, sometimes that can not work. So on older instruments, you spend quite a long time measuring all of the points of the instrument, making marks with a chinograph pencil, and eventually deciding on where we feel the very central point that will work with when taking into account the top block and the top of the instrument, the bottom, and also the centre and between the sound holes. Because as I say, on old instruments, quite often they really can be quite wonky. Another thing that can really affect the playability of an instrument is the distance from here to there. So that really decides how easy it is going to be to get over the instrument. So you can see on this instrument it's got very nice sloping shoulders. There's a really nice easy distance from here to here. So actually getting over the instrument becomes very easy. On some older, larger instruments or slightly less well-designed ones, when this starts to become higher and closer to this, you're getting further and further away from it being easy to get round and a sort of playable, comfortable experience. So this is really interesting. I thought this would be fun to show everyone. First of all, the bass itself, it's a William Callow. Absolutely love the sound holes on this bass. I just can't get enough of them. They are in the sort of Del Jesus style, very unusual to see them on a bass. You almost never see them at all. And I just love that this is just exactly like a giant violin. You can really see the whole aspect of everything. I mean, it is just a large fiddle, which I think is really cool. It was really nice to see it's really unmolested double bass. This is coming for a bit of a setup, and we're just halfway through repairing this edge here. So I thought it had a couple of interesting points. You can see here that it actually has the original neck. So this would have been made as a 3-string bass. Basically what someone's done, and you do quite often see this, is that this is actually the original 3-string neck. So you can see how narrow it is. And you'll see that someone's actually almost splayed out a slightly wider fingerboard to just about manage to fit 4 strings on it. So the owner of the instrument actually really likes the neck as it is, so we're not going to change that. But I thought it was interesting to see how they'd got from sort of solving the problem of you only had width of a 3-string, and they've made it into a 4-string. So you can really see the difference in the thickness of the neck. Also, you would have thought a thinner neck like this is obviously not going to be quite strong, but you've got to remember that when this instrument was made, it was actually made to carry 3 gut strings, which obviously have less tension. So having a slightly spindlier neck wasn't such an issue. Whereas now, with higher tension strings and sort of solo strings and things like that, really there wouldn't be enough strength there. Certainly not with the rosewood fingerboard. This is also a really good example. You can see the overstand of this instrument. I would say that probably is exactly as it was. So you can see we've got about 18 millimeters of overstand, and that at the time would have been the right amount to, that's what people thought was the right amount to give the instrument. Another 100 years previous to this, you would see even less. And when I was talking to see about the relationship between the heel of the neck here and that bit there, you see there's almost none. I mean, it's to start to play in the upper register, especially with that short overstand, you can see already I've only just got to here and I'm already struggling to get over. By the time I've got to there, I mean, it's starting to get pretty impossible to play due to the size of the shoulders of it. As I say, seeing an instrument in this shape, you'd never make one now. It would be very unusual if you did. But at the time that was what they did, and I think it's really nice to see this one exactly as it was originally. It's lovely. So I thought as well, here's another interesting bass. It's German-made instrument, sort of Hawksian style. But again, you can see here that the overstand has been increased, but someone's done that by putting a wedge. So you can see there's about a 12 millimeter wedge has been put on top. So this is probably getting on for maybe 35, 38 millimeter overstand, which isn't bad. But you can see that the very thin wedge has gone on here. So it starts at almost nothing at the top and ends up about 12, 15 millimeters at the bottom. And what they've done is that effectively increases the overstand of the instrument. But what it does do is it actually adds to the tension. So if you imagine, this has basically done that. So actually what I've ended up with is more tension over the bridge, whereas if this neck was taken out and reset back into the instrument, you could have basically brought this out and done that. So you'd have ended up keeping the bridge height, but this part here would have basically come forward to there if you'd have reset it. But they haven't. They've basically glued this on, glued this wedge on, glued the fingerboard on, and they've kind of got round needing more overstand that way. So I just thought, whilst we're setting this instrument up, actually, this is a 5-string bass we've made to go to an Italian orchestra. And you can see, interestingly here, Dan's just, this is my colleague, and Dan Paxton. He's just in the middle of setting this instrument up. You can see, really interestingly, this is our 5-string neck set. So we've basically given it an extra centimetre here. So this is at 50 millimetres overstand, which is pretty groundbreaking. You know, it's not something everybody does yet, but it really does help. So what that does is it gets the fingerboard and everything, and the sort of the part where the player plays even further away from the body. And this is quite a large instrument. This is our Ruggieri model, which is a bit of a beast to play. So by increasing the overstand even more, that allows us to then increase the bridge height even more. So this is about 14 millimeters higher bridge height than our normal 4/4. So it's basically, what that does is it gets everything further away from the instrument. So if with a German bow, if you're going to play over it, it basically brings everything further away from the body. So actually you get really good clearance, even on a really large instrument like this. We've actually managed to achieve where you've got really good playability, really good clearance, all by paying attention to the neck set and the overstand, along with obviously the other factors. But it just really shows how key this is. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that video. If you have any questions or you'd like to see us do a video on a specific subject, then just let us know in the comments. And also make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel.